Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to make some very simple samosa type pasties. So the first thing I would do if I was you would get everything ready before you actually start doing any cooking. So I've just got a couple of tablespoons there of peas and sweet corn, which I've taken straight out of the freezer. I've chopped up about half a red pepper. Okay, certainly don't need a whole one for this, or unless it's a very small one, but I've got half a pepper there. Sliced up or chopped up a couple of small mushrooms, and again I've just actually there chopped up probably about a third of a small onion. Okay, because again we're not looking at making a huge quantity here, but you can vary the amounts depending on how many you're going to make. Okay, I've used, just to keep this quite simple, I've actually used some ready-made puff pastry. I've bought the ready roll pastry as well, and I've just cut that ready into 6 equal squares ready to make my pasties. Okay, I've also greased a baking tray ready, and I've put just a small amount of milk into a beaker with a pastry brush ready to actually finish those off, and I've just got some curry powder to the side of me ready to go. Okay, so I've got a bit of oil here in my pan, and I'm going to add all of my ingredients in. So I'm going to pop in my onion. I've just got this on a low heat. It doesn't actually need to be on a particularly high heat. The peppers, and again you can actually change this recipe to use the vegetables that you actually enjoy eating. You don't have to stick to these ones. And obviously I've got a red onion here, which I'm sure you've seen, and a red pepper, but you could use a white onion, and there are lots of different colour peppers, as you know, that you could actually be using. Now I'm just going to fry those off for a couple of minutes first on their own, because they are our harder vegetables, so they do just take a couple of extra minutes to actually go through. Our mushrooms don't actually take very long at all, so I'm just going to start those off for a few minutes first. Okay, so those have been frying now for a couple of minutes, so I'm going to add the mushrooms in as well. You could, if you wanted to, put some potato in here as well. So if you are going to use some potato, I would boil up the potato first, not so it's really soft, so that it's just starting to cook through, and then chop that up into smaller pieces, or you could use canned potatoes, and those would actually be ready to use straight off. If you wanted to, obviously again you could put some meat in here, and as I said, there are lots and lots of different vegetables you could actually put in here to vary the taste of it up. Okay, so I'm going to pop in my peas and sweet corn as well now, and just actually cook that through for a few minutes. Okay, I have decided to actually put some chopped potatoes in here, so I've actually used some canned potatoes, so they won't actually need to really cook through. I'm just putting them in here to mix them around with the other ingredients, but being canned they are already cooked, so we don't need to, as I said, worry too much about that. And we also don't need to worry too much about the veg going soft at this stage if we prefer it soft, because they are going to cook for an extra 15 minutes in the oven. So I have put the oven on. The oven's on gas mark 6, which is 200 degrees C. And what I'm going to do now is just actually add to this a couple of teaspoons of curry powder, as I said, just to make them as a samosa type dish. I'm just going to make sure that's all mixed around, and then I'm going to turn that off because I can actually start filling up my pastry. Okay, so what we're going to do, take a square of your pastry. If you've got your milk, you can either use milk for this, or you can use some beaten egg, or you could even use water. If you don't have a pastry brush, I'm sure you will have washed your hands before cooking, so you could just actually use the tips of your fingers to do that. Now we're going to fold these into a triangular shape. So we basically want your filling to sort of fill this area. Right, now you don't want to overfill them, otherwise they'll burst open when they're actually cooking. But obviously you want them to have a nice amount of filling as well. So pop some of your filling in there. And then we're going to fold it over diagonally. Just press down the edges so that we know they're in the right place. And then again, you can either use your thumb, or you can use, sometimes I've actually used the top end of a spoon to do this, or like I'm doing here, you can actually use a fork. So just seal down the edges so they're nice and secure. You also need to make sure that you actually put a couple of holes so that any steam can actually get out of there. And again, then you can just brush the top over with some milk. So you repeat that with all of your pasties, all of your samosa pasties, and then you can pop those onto a baking tray. Now I've spaced these out over 2 trays because it is important to make sure that the heat can get right the way around the pasty to make sure that it actually cooks the pastry through properly. So I've spaced those out over 2 trays, and then we're going to pop those into the oven for about 15 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. Okay, so when your pasties or your samosa type pasties are nice and golden brown and they're nice and firm and well risen, you can take them out of the oven, and I just leave them to cool a little bit and then they'll be ready to eat. Just to let you know as well, you could do exactly the same process here using a fruit filling to make something like your apple turnovers. Personally, if I was doing apple turnovers, I would use some canned pie filling, some apple pie filling, although you could just use a can of sliced apples. And then when I put the milk over the top, I would just sprinkle a bit of sugar over the top as well. But then you can fold it up and cook them in exactly the same way. I hope you enjoy having a go at that one.